terrible sadness and a quiet, unyielding anger. These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve. America was targeted for attack because we're the brightest beacon for freedom and opportunity in the world, and no one will keep that light from shining. Today, our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature, and we responded with the best of America, with the daring of our rescue workers, with the caring for strangers and neighbors who came to give blood and help in any way they could. Immediately following the first attack, I implemented our government's emergency response plans. Our military is powerful and it's prepared. Our emergency teams are working in New York City and Washington, D.C. to help with local rescue efforts and around the world from further attacks. The functions of our government continue without interruption. Federal agencies in Washington, which had to be evacuated today, are reopening for essential personnel tonight and will be open for business tomorrow. Our financial institutions remain strong, and the American economy will be open for business as well. The search is underway for those who are behind these evil acts. I've directed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and to bring them to justice. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them. I appreciate so very much the members of Congress who have joined me in strongly condemning these attacks. And on behalf of the American people, I thank the many world leaders who have called to offer their condolences and assistance. America and our friends and allies join with all those who want peace and security in the world, and we stand together to win the war against terrorism. Tonight I ask for your prayers for all those who grieve, for the children whose worlds have been shattered, for all whose sense of safety and security has been threatened. And I pray they will be comforted by a power greater than any of us, spoken through the ages in Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. This is a day when all Americans from every walk of life unite in our resolve for justice and peace. America has stood down enemies before, and we will do so this time. None of us will ever forget this day, yet we go forward to defend freedom and all that is good and just in our world. Thank you, good night, and God bless America.
President Bush addressing the nation from the Oval Office, and back to Tom Oliphant and Bill Kristol. Tom, your comments.
A short speech.
And the damage unspeakable. I'm Larry King. We'll have a full hour with lots of guests. We begin with the governor of New York, George Pataki. Governor Pataki, what can you tell us when you bring us up to date on statistics here? We have to go through this. Firemen, policemen, people, what?
Well, Larry, we're just not looking at statistics yet. We're still doing everything in our power to do the searching and rescue efforts because we hope there are still people that can be rescued. The city has the finest emergency forces anywhere in the world, and we've augmented them with our National Guard and state emergency forces as well. And there's an ongoing effort to try to rescue as many people as possible and to make sure we provide the best possible care to those who have been injured. So the time for counting is later. The time for action is now, and that action is underway.
We do know, however, that 200 firemen and 78 policemen are missing, right?
We do know that numbers of police and fire are missing, and it's a tribute to their heroism, that they went down there and risked their lives to protect others and try to save other lives. And, you know, Larry, this is a very dark day for America, but out of the darkness you see the spirit and you see the hope. I was at St. Vincent's Hospital a little while ago visiting some of the injured firemen and injured policemen, and they were asking about if they could go back to try to do more to help uncover their comrades and the people who are still at risk. So the spirit is strong. We will get through this.
Governor, you've been close to being inside and near this. Can you tell us what's going on?
Well, there's still very great risk downtown of possible additional building collapses, so that's why we've ordered, along with the mayor, New York City south of 14th Street to be shut down. And right now it's simply a matter of trying to contain fires and work through the rubble. We have National Guard heavy equipment, wreckers and tow trucks and others on trying to help out with the police and fire who are going through the rubble and trying to just find as many people that we can save and rescue and help those who need our help as possible. At the same time, we're making sure that the city and the surrounding area is as secure as possible. And again, Larry, I got to tell you that the spirit of the people has been enormous. They haven't been intimidated by this horrible act of cowardly terror. I was just out on a block where for blocks people were lined up waiting to donate blood, not cowed by this terrorism, but showing their faith in America and belief in tomorrow. And that's what we have to make sure triumphs here.
Governor, how close have you gotten to the scene itself?
I've gotten downtown, but I haven't gotten all the way down to the towers themselves, perhaps later on. But what I've been trying to do is coordinate response and make sure that we have the best possible efforts, and I believe we do. And Larry, I also want to say that the cooperation, not just of the city and the state, but the surrounding states, the federal officials have mobilized resources from around the country to help us out, and they are here. And we've gotten expressions of support and condolences from around the world, and we're going to get through this. We're united as a people, we're strong as a people, and we will get through this and make America and New York even stronger.
We know the military's on full alert and aircraft carriers are coming to your harbor. Is there fear of possibly more?
Well, Larry, I think the federal government's looking to reassure us by having this presence, and we're delighted to have that reassurance. There can never be guarantees. No one predicted this. No one anticipated or had advance warning of this attack. So you never know what tomorrow might bring. But my understanding from my communications with the President and the White House is that they are unaware of any additional specific threats. Obviously, we are on the highest possible state of security and alert, and will continue to be so. Where
were you when you heard of the first crash?
I was in the city, and I got a call to turn on the television. There was a plane hit the World Trade Center, and then I saw the second one and immediately called the White House and spoke with the President in a very short period of time and urged him to shut down the airspace around New York, and they immediately shut down the airspace around the country. And who knows what else may have happened if the President hadn't taken that step.
He was in Florida, so he patched you right through.
Right.
What was his response when you got him on the phone?
He was very supportive, offering to do anything the federal government could do, told us that they had gone to the highest possible alert and were undertaking all the security steps that could possibly be taken. And then immediately after that, he shut down the airspace around the country, to his credit, and I'm pleased that that step was taken.
Will New York airports open tomorrow?
We're not predicting at this point. We'll stay in close touch with the federal emergency officials. They are calling the shots. They're the ones who are in charge of the security analysis, and they'll make the determination when the New York City airports should reopen.
Thank you, Governor Pataki. Thanks for giving us the time.
Thank you, Larry.
Next, we go to Washington, D.C., where James Baker, the former Secretary of State, is standing by. Is this, Mr. Secretary, a failure on the part of American policy?
I don't think it's a failure on the part of American policy, Larry. I think that there probably were perhaps some lapses in security. It would be well, I think, for us to consider beefing up some of our intelligence capabilities, particularly our ability.
Somehow. We leave you tonight with these images, flashpoints from a day that cannot be forgotten. For the latest on this still unfolding story, stay tuned to this CBS station. There'll be complete coverage on the early show and on the CBS Evening News. And we will have continuing CBS News coverage on some of these stations. On some other stations, we will not see until sometime tomorrow morning. I'm Dan Rather in New York.
Tonight, attack on America.
I saw the plane hit the building.
And a nightmare unfolds.
It's got to be a terrorist attack.
In New York, hijacked planes slam into the World Trade Center.
Move out of the way! Let's go! Hey, come on!
And the Twin Towers crumble. In Washington, a plane dives into the Pentagon.
We are at threat condition Delta. That is the highest condition that we can go to.
And near Pittsburgh.
Witnesses reported seeing the large passenger plane take a nosedive.
Still another plane crashes.
Some 44
Manhattan terrorists crashed 2 planes into the city's famous Twin Towers at the World Trade Center. Both towers came crashing down. 200 firefighters alone are feared to be dead tonight.
And outside Washington, D.C., another terrorist plane slams into the Pentagon. About 100 people are believed to have died in that crash. In all, 4 planes, 3 of them heading for LAX and another for San Francisco, have crashed at the hands of terrorists. On board those planes alone, there were 266 people. Our colleague David Ono has more on today's devastation.
This tragedy has shaken Americans to their core. Not only is this a tragedy of proportions we have never experienced before, but it's a tragedy that we watched unfold before our very eyes. Images that we will never forget.
Terror struck early in New York City, 8:48 a.m. Eastern Time. The American Airlines Flight 11, heading from Boston to LAX, strikes the first devastating blow, slamming into the North Tower of the 110-story Twin Towers at the World Trade Center, the tallest buildings in Manhattan. The towers stand in the heart of New York City's financial center. Some 50,000 people work every day at the complex, including the headquarters of many corporations. It's just a short distance from Wall Street.
We heard a big bang, and then we saw smoke coming out, and everybody started running out, and we saw the plane on the other side of the building, and there was smoke everywhere, and people are jumping out the windows.
9:05 a.m., less than 20 minutes after the first crash, a second jetliner believed to be United Airlines Flight 175, also heading from Boston to Los Angeles, slams into the South Tower of the World Trade Center. Another scene of absolute terror played out in front of a horrified audience on live TV. From the ground, a cameraman captures this horrifying scene, looking straight up as the jetliner smashes into the building and goes right through it.
This is as close as we can get to the base of the World Trade Center. You can see the firemen assembled here, the police officers, FBI agents, and you can see the 2 towers. A huge explosion now raining debris on all of us. We better get out of the way!
And on the ground, news crews at first rushed to the scene. One crew ran through the inside of the damaged World Trade Center, but quickly left the building when firefighters and emergency teams ran out.
I got no light.
Shortly after 10 a.m. Eastern Time, more than an hour after the first crash, the South Tower at the Trade Center collapses. Tons of debris and glass showering the streets of Lower Manhattan. A huge cloud of smoke billows across New York City. The world-famous twin landmarks reduced to one. That building severely damaged by the terrorist attack. And less than half an hour later, it happened again. The North Tower collapses in a heap of rubble and broken glass.
And there's, you can see, perhaps the second tower, the front tower, the top portion of which is collapsing. Good Lord. There are no words.
On the ground, it's a scene of sheer chaos. People and emergency crews running for cover.
Get over this building! Let's go, jump over the building!
We saw a shadow, it looked like a plane. Next thing we know, it was boom, boom, and the floor started shaking. And then we saw debris fall down, and next thing we know, we had to get out of the building.
I thought we'd be able to unrun it, but we couldn't. It was pitch black. It was like a comet just hit the earth.
One freelance photographer captures this scene. Tons of debris from the collapsed towers, a section of lower Manhattan that looked like a war zone. But the devastation wasn't over yet. About 5:20 p.m. Eastern Time, another high-rise at the World Trade Center complex, Building 7, a 47-story structure, collapses after being on fire for most of the day. The building had been evacuated hours earlier. In Sarasota, Florida, President Bush calls the crashes an apparent terrorist attack and a national tragedy.
Two airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
In the nation's capital, another horrific scene. This one at the Pentagon, the nerve center of the United States military. A jetliner believed to be an American Airlines flight heading from Dulles Airport outside Washington to LAX smashes into the building. A portion of the Pentagon bursts into flames, and one entire section of the five-sided building collapses. Workers say the whole building shook. Employees at the Departments of Justice, State, Treasury, Defense, and the CIA were evacuated, an estimated 20,000 at the Pentagon alone. A half hour after the Pentagon attack, yet a fourth hijacking. United Airlines Flight 93 heading from Newark to San Francisco. It crashed about 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. Its target unknown, but some are speculating it may have been aimed at Camp David. As devastating as these images are, we anticipate that this is only the beginning of the tragedy. The rescue effort is underway, and it may be days before we truly get a measure of how horrible today really was. David Ono, ABC 7 Eyewitness News, back to you.
Information still coming in, a very fluid situation still hours after these attacks took place. Conflicting reports now about the survivors that are reportedly being pulled out. We're getting some reports now that there are no survivors found yet in the World Trade Center buildings, but that some are being found in the surrounding buildings that also collapsed or were damaged. We're going to try to find out more on that. In the meantime, more on the impact here in the Southland. All four of the hijacked planes that crashed today were headed for California. American Flight 11 took off from Boston on its way to LAX. American Flight 77 out of Dulles Airport was LAX bound as well.
United Flight 93 left Newark, New Jersey, but never made it to its intended destination, San Francisco. And United Flight 175 was coming to LAX from Boston. Now we move on to explore the crash that millions of Americans witnessed on live television, the second collision at the World Trade Center. Eyewitness News reporter Lori Shore is standing by in Hoboken, New Jersey with reaction tonight. Lori.
Laura, I'd like you to take a look across the Hudson River with me now, and you'll see lower Manhattan tonight. This is the view from Sinatra Park, popular with people who want to take in the expansive New York City skyline. But tonight, locals who know the skyline like the backs of their hands are suddenly having to reacquaint themselves with their hometown. A dark hole now replaces the two World Trade Center towers that just this morning dwarfed the adjacent skyscrapers.
Seeing it on TV, it just doesn't seem real, obviously, and actually, believe it or not, it seems less real even seeing it in person, because you just can't believe that, you know, you're actually looking over there at the skyline, that, you know, you're used to seeing the World Trade Center there, and now it's just all the smoke and everything. And I don't know, it's just kind of have to see it for your own eyes, yet you still don't even believe your own eyes when you're out, when you're out here, because you wouldn't think it would happen.
This is exclusive video of the destruction that has forever scarred New York City. And the terror in witnesses' faces reminds us of the emotional scars as well. In fact, in Sinatra Park, survivors are swapping terrifying stories like the one about the World Trade Center worker who stepped outside for a cigarette break just in the nick of time. And the one about the uncle who called his family from the top floor after the first impact, but was never heard from again. Back now live, folks here at Sinatra Park keep their eyes fixed on this site, knowing their minds may never fully grasp the view. Reporting live from across the Hudson in New Jersey, Lori Shore, ABC 7 Eyewitness News. Back to you.
Lori, thank you. It's been a day unlike any other in U.S. history, and an extraordinary day for the nation's chief executive as well. President Bush was addressing a group of school children in Florida when the Trade Center was attacked. He was rushed off to an Air Force base in Louisiana, then to a highly secure Air Force base in Nebraska, home to the Strategic Air Command. Finally, back to the White House, where Mr. Bush spoke to the American people on this day of immeasurable tragedy.
These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they...
The senior executives that we've been paying in our national security apparatus to protect the American people have utterly failed. This is a catastrophic failure of American intelligence, and tens of thousands of Americans have paid the price.
Well, America has been changed forever by the events of this sad and tragic day. For the families who lost loved ones, the pain must be unimaginable. 3 of the 4 hijacked planes were headed to LAX. Jay Jackson is live near LAX with more on the victims and reaction from friends and family. Jay?
Yeah, Pat, but first let me talk about something that just happened just a short time ago. We're on Century Boulevard, and just behind me, this intersection has been closed off all day. We'll push into it, but just maybe 2 or 3 minutes ago, 2 fire trucks came speeding through here going west on Century Boulevard, headed right towards LAX. We aren't sure right now what's actually happening at LAX. We're going to try and find that out a little bit later. But meantime, as you was talking about, our focus today was talking with the people, dealing with the people who are dealing with this tragedy personally. You know, it's hard enough to watch those pictures.
There's really no more